We are now going to assemble the logotype in Wix, using Wix as like a sort of a design tool. I'm on one of those blank pages that I use to play around. So what I've done is I've already put all of the icons on the page here. I had uploaded them previously, and I have cropped all of them already. I left one just to show you what you need to do, because you need to hide this, but then you still have to keep it, because at some point you're going to have to use that for the attribution that the noun project expects from the users. So it's a good idea to just have it there, sitting there. Now, I also already made 3 separate pieces of text. They are all quite similar. These logotypes, these fonts are quite similar, but they are a little bit different from each other. Now, this one here is Josephine. They are all bold characters. And this one here is Brandon, it's called. This one here is something called Ace Sans. And this one here is Montserrat. And the reason why I have picked this font, so actually I'm just going to take one of them and make it bigger so that you can see what I mean. And there's something in Wix which is kind of a drag when you are designing a logotype, which is that unfortunately you can't scale anything. So you can't kind of like take this and make it bigger like you would be able to do on most other softwares like Illustrator or Photoshop or Photopea or whatever. But here, unfortunately, you have to actually play with the font size. So I'm just going to do that for just a second and then open this up so that you actually see what I'm talking about. Now, this says the angry cat, okay, because Kızgın is angry cat in Turkish. So I wanted to have a font which has kind of like pointy tips, and this all of the fonts that I picked are like this. They have pointy tips. So their N, for example, the letter N here is very. It's almost, you know, you could almost call it aggressive, or the K or the Z here has a little thing that's coming out. So I wanted to have a font like this, and a bold font. I also wanted to have a bold font, but then I also wanted to try one other thing, which I'm just going to do right now. I also want to see if I can actually make a really condensed font work with this, but a really condensed one, such as this one here. This is called Bebas. So the idea is, what you need to now, we are going to combine this icon or one of these icons with this word, and the combination of that is going to make up our logo. So let me just move these over here. And bring this here. So that's one of them. Now this is very nice and round, and then this is very condensed. So do these two actually create a good relationship? Yes, they do, because they are creating a contrast. So now this could get smaller. It would have to get smaller because it's actually going to go up here. This is the header. I left the header open here so that you get an idea of the size that the logotype needs to be. So for example, if I take these two and attach them to the header, see, they're way too big. It's way too big. I wouldn't have any room left for the menu or anything else. I only have the logo here now, but there's going to be a menu here eventually on top of the header. So they actually need to get even smaller than they are now. So let me make this smaller, and then let me reduce the font size here, bring it down to like 45. Let's see, how does that work? So if I put these two together like this, and now move them up to the header, so I should be able to attach. Yes, they are attached to the header because now they have these orange lines around them. So this is the area, this is the space that the logotype really has, because here there's going to be a menu, And yes, you might say, well, why don't you make the header wider? That's usually not such a good idea. I am going to show you some examples of wider headers designs eventually. After this tutorial, I'm going to make one about designing a header. But then I'm also going to show you that a much better way is to have a narrow header and then do whatever attractiveness you want to do on the home page. So let's say that this is alternative 1. So what did I do here? Let me zoom in. If I zoom in, can we still see? Yeah, sort of. So we have a rounded icon, and then next to that we have a very compressed font. Now I'm thinking that I could use an even more compressed font, and I'm going to go and look for one in just a little bit, but for now I'm just going to leave that here. So let's go back to the actual size. Another thing that I think might look good here between these two things is maybe a separator line. So I already have one here. I have two here, in fact. So I'm just going to move that up into the header as well. Oops. That's right here. Ooh, I can't seem to select it. Now it's attached to the header. So if I were to move this between these two, but then make it a little bit shorter, and then align it, let's see, align it from the middle, and then also align this font from this text from the middle as well. Now, the reason why I'm doing that, the reason why I'm aligning things from the middle is, again, because this is a very rounded shape, and rounded shapes can usually get aligned from the middle in a really good way, but then when you try to align rounded shapes with other kinds of things from the bottom, I'm going to show that to you right now, then it's usually not going to work. Then they are going to look, then it's going to look like as if this is falling down and this is sticking up. Or if you try to do it from the top, then it's also going to create the same kind of problem. So let's do it like that. And then again, you're going to end up, whoops, getting this big hole here, which is going to look really strange. And also they're not really going to look aligned. So the smartest thing to do when you have rounded objects, which most logo icons will be rounded objects, will be to align them from the middle, like this, like I just did. And that would also apply to this one and this one and this one, although this is not a rounded form, it would still probably align better from the middle, as would this one here as well. As I said, I went to look for some extra compressed fonts, and I have 4 of them right here. And now what I'm going to do, and I still have that Bebas right here, although I decreased the font size a little bit. I brought it down to 35 points. Now what I want to do is I want to actually look at these one by one and explain to you why I wouldn't use them. Not why I would use them, but why I wouldn't use them if I decide not to use them. And I'm going to zoom in order to be able to look at them up close. So now with Bebas, I don't have a major problem. It's a very well designed font. It's a famous font. It doesn't give me any problem with the kerning, which is the space between the characters, which is very important. You always have to pay attention to that the space between the characters is fine. And also you can adjust this space between the characters, as you already know, as we've already talked about. Now here it's 0.2, so what would happen if we were to make it 0? It would get really close, and then that probably wouldn't look so great. Now let me just click out to see. Yeah, it becomes too squished, so I would pay attention to that. So let me bring it back to 0.2. Let's see, I have to be very careful here when I do that. This is 0.05, this is 0.1. Now let's look at what 0.1 is like. Actually 0.1 looks pretty good, so that could be a kerning, a letter spacing that we could also conceivably use. It works very nicely. So Bebas would be something that I might use. The characters are very nicely designed, the thicknesses are equal, which is also important, which is not the case with some of the others that I'm going to get into in a minute, so that you know what sorts of things to look for when you are actually putting together a logo, what sort of things you need to watch out for in the font. So let me just put that aside for now, and let's take this one and bring this one over here. This is something called Chingolo Pro, and one of the problems it has, it doesn't have Turkish characters. So if I were to use this, if I were to decide to use this, I would actually need to make an I. And the way that I would do that, not that I'm going to use this, but I just want to, let's see, here's the box. I wouldn't try to scale this myself. What I would do is I would enter values in here, and it would probably be something like 6 pixels is my guess that we would need, and it's going to be very difficult to move this around now. I can basically only do it with the arrow key on the keyboard. If I were to touch this, I would probably scale it and then lose the proportions, so I need to just do it like this, very, very carefully. And I wouldn't even be able to do it if I wasn't zoomed in like this. So let's see, we're almost there, almost, and now let's see what this actually looks like. It's still a little bit too big. The only way that I can select this is by surround selecting it, but not even then. I would obviously need to change the color. It's green, it would need to become black if I was going to use it with a black thing. But anyway, this is how I would, this would basically be my only way of creating a dot. However, whoops, I'm gonna have a hard time selecting it again now. Okay, I would probably need to decrease the width to 4 pixels so that it actually becomes like a dot. But anyway, I'm going to delete this because I don't want to use this font anyway, and I'm going to explain to you why I don't want to use it. I don't want to use it because of this letter Z, which looks very unattractive to me, but also, equally importantly, as it's looking unattractive, it looks too much like the number 2. So that is one reason why I wouldn't want to use it. The kerning here is pretty good, the letter spacing. There's no problem with that. The thickness of the widths, which is another important thing that we need to watch out for, is also not so bad, but this letter Z is really killing it, and I wouldn't want to use this font, even though it's very compressed, even if it's kind of the thing that I was looking for. I would still not be using this. Let me just close this. Now we have two here that are very, very similar. So let me bring both of them over at the same time. The letter G is different, this here. But other than that, these actually look, well, the letter K is different as well. But in terms of the rest of the characters, they actually look pretty similar. Now, I wouldn't use these either because of the thickness of the... okay, I need to zoom in really a lot to be able to explain this to you. When I look at this, it doesn't look equal. So the letter K, these two letters here, look much thicker than the other letters. Now that's because of, obviously, because those bars are very close to each other. Optically they look thicker, but then also, then with the G, it's the opposite. It looks too skinny. These look too thin. And then also with the letter Z, these horizontal bars don't look right to me. They look too thin. So when I look at this, there's a kind of like an inequality between the thickness of the strokes. And the same applies, well, it's really bad with this one. It's not as bad with this one. This one is a little bit better, but then we still have that problem with the K. The K looks too thick. But the rest, well, the Z looks too skinny. So when you look at it from a distance, the Z looks really skinny in comparison to all of the other letters. So that is one other reason why I wouldn't use this font either. and I'm going to delete this one as well. So now you're starting to get a sense of what I would be looking for as a designer when I'm looking for a good font. I look for all of these little detail things, but then I found this one here, which is actually really nice. So I'm going to zoom in again to look at this up close. So this is a very slender ultra compressed font. It's called, let's see, what was it called again? It was called, ooh, I can't even see this because I'm so zoomed in. It's white something. We'll find out in a minute. But anyway, this one I think I'm going to actually use. There's absolutely no problem with the weights of the strokes. It's all very equal. The spacing between the letters is very equal. And also it has a Turkish eye, which is a bonus. Not that that would have made a difference. I would have made one if I had found something really good, but I didn't. So let me just zoom out to full size. And can I still see it, even though it's a really, really, really thin font? Can I still see it on the header? Yes, I can. So this is probably the one that, for this particular thing, I'm going to go with. Now I'm just going to make a copy of this. Hold on. And just bring it down here because I may want to use it again. But then what I'm going, oh, and this stroke as well, I'm going to make a copy of that as well. And bring that down here as well. Hold on, let me grab it. Why can't I grab this? Okay, I'll just leave it there for now. Now, as you can see, I'm working with a lot of alternatives. And I keep making copies because I may want to use something again, and I have lots and lots of icons here, and lots of different kind of texts, fonts with which I wrote the same thing basically, which is the Angry Cat. And I advise you to do the same. I advise you to work with a lot of different material all together at the same time, because that is going to help you in making a really nice logo. I actually closed the editor and started it again because where I left off I couldn't move this line, and that happened because since we are working in the cloud, since the Wix server is not sitting right here in my home, these kinds of things very often happen where you end up getting stuck, where the editor stops working, in which case what you do is you just save it, you close it, and then you start it again. So just to let you know that that's what actually happened. So let me just align these again, because I am going to actually take all three of these and group them, and then I'm actually going to save it to my designs, and I'm going to say Angry Cat 2022 logo 1. Save, and now I can delete it from here because it's in my designs. It's right here, Angry Cat logo 2021. Oops, hold on. It seems like as if, oh no, I have the whole thing. I just accidentally seem to have not deleted these. Now let's try another one. Let's actually take this one. This is an icon that I really like, and I think with this one a condensed font won't do the trick. What we need is something like this. This is Josephine. I think this needs a really nice chunky font to go with it, but however I think the letter spacing needs to get narrowed down. This here I think is Brandon, which might also work. No, it's something called Ace Sans, but I think this would also work. So let me start with this one here. Let's see, character and line spacing. I think this needs to come in quite a bit in order to work together with the chunkiness of the logo, because the logo is really chunky. And I think another thing I can do with this here is I can actually put this on 2 lines, and it might not look bad at all. So and then align it with the logo. So the line spacing, I'm going to reduce this. I'm going to reduce it to the point where the dot of the I is not getting eaten up. So like just a tiny bit like this. And now with this one here, I can actually align it from the bottom, because although this is sort of a rounded shape, it's still got a nice flat little button. So, and I'm going to scale this down to the point where his feet or his bottom is just aligning with the text, and then his ears are just sticking out a tiny little bit. And so this combination here, I think, would work very nicely for a logo as well. Now, the problem, of course, is that the way that I have it right now, it's way too big to fit on the header. So let me just move it up here. And so what we need to do is we need to make the text much smaller, like this, maybe 38, and then also scale down the logo type. So this is a drag. I know that this is a drag when you have to do these things like that, instead of just having the comfort, the luxury of being able to scale down the font, the text file. But unfortunately in Wix we can't do that. But Wix is so good to work for with in terms of making logo types and things like that, because you are doing it right where they are going to get used. So you are seeing what you are doing right away. So this could be another logo type, except when I'm looking at this, I think this spacing here is still a little bit too much. So I'm actually going to reduce that spacing. So if we bring it down to 0, it might even need a little bit more, so I'm just going to do that. .05 might be too much. Let's go with 0.02, because I think that will be about right. So here we have our second one. So I can group this now, and I can save it to my designs as Angry Cat 2022 logo 2. Let me just check and make sure that it's there. Yes, it is. So I'm going to make a few more, but I'm not going to do those now in front of you, because then this tutorial will become unnecessarily long. But I think you're getting the idea. The idea is the combination of an icon. Let me just zoom into this so that we can look at it up close. Let me just move it over here. The idea is to combine an icon with a piece of typography, and with that piece of typography there are certain things that we pay attention to. We pay attention to the structure of the letters, that they all have a nice equal weight, that because, you know, when we were looking at it just a little while ago with those other fonts, there were real problems that some parts of them looked really thin and some parts of them looked really thick. So there was a kind of like an inequality. So we make sure that the fonts that we have picked don't do that. We pay attention to the space between the letters. Sometimes it needs to be a little bit more, sometimes it needs to be a little bit less. And again, the relationship between the icon and the typography is what determines that. So this here has thick lines and less white space, so in this case, if I make this here, the spacing here wider, it isn't working as well, because then it kind of breaks apart from the from the icon. See? Now the icon is now becoming much thicker, much darker than so we had it like this, or I think, no, yes, like this. So we need to have that density here in order to kind of get this to work together with the icon. And then of course you pay attention to alignment. So this is aligning from the top, from the bottom, sorry. The top we can't align exactly because there's really nothing here that we can use to align it to, so we kind of like do it optically. We do an optical alignment. That's another thing that you pay attention to. So you pay attention to a lot of details, and then the combination of all of those details, and then combined with the icon, and then the font that you have picked, and whether you are putting it on 2 lines or 1 line, all of these things then determine how successful your logotype actually is. So that's it for the logo tutorial. Now I'm going to carry these into a header tutorial that I'm going to do next. Header design tutorial, I mean.